The talk around Ausar Thompson starting out to get his rookie season for the Detroit Pistons are starting to heat up again. What are 3 lineups that if the Pistons were to decide Ausar Thompson will be starting, that he could be running with in the starting lineup? We'll talk about those 3 in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Ku Kahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Kahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Just want to give you guys an update. We will be returning to 5 days a week, full-time podcast. You guys will be getting a new Locked On Pistons episode every single day starting next week. So stay tuned for that, coming back full-time. But I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. And like I said in the cold open, each segment we'll be talking about a different lineup that Ausar Thompson could start with. If the Pistons decide to start Ausar Thompson, what are their 3 options to try to craft a lineup with him in the starting lineup? And the reason why we're having this conversation is because James Edwards III, the Detroit Pistons beat writer for The Athletic, came out with an article this morning. I'm recording this on the 11th. Came out with an article this morning talking about why Ausar Thompson could be the starter immediately. He doesn't say in the article that he's guaranteeing he's going to be a starter. He's not saying in the article he knows for a fact he's going to be a starter. You guys should go read it yourselves. But throughout the article, he talks about why there's some hints that lead to believing that Ausar could very well be the starter day one. And the only thing I want to read from this article, because again, I don't want to spoil his whole article. You guys should be having an Athletic subscription. You guys definitely should check it out. But the only thing I want to read is he has a quote in here from Troy Weaver, which I think actually says a lot. It says, quote, "I've never seen a team shoot their way to the top. It starts with defense. I said it when I arrived. I'll say it until my last days. That's why these 3, Monty Williams, Marcus Sasser, and Ausar Thompson, are here." I believe we talked about that comment when Weaver first made it in that press conference introducing the rookies and Monty Williams. I don't believe it's true that you just can't shoot your way to the top. I think we've seen teams shoot their way to the top. But you also need defense, obviously. You need to be a really good defense. The reason why I find it so interesting is because the Pistons were really bad defensively this past season. And my whole argument, we made an episode 2 weeks ago why I was saying I think Ausar Thompson should be the starter out the gate. And obviously it was all about defense. So seeing that quote again, even though I had already heard the quote and already had talked about the quote, I kind of forgot about it a little bit. So seeing it again kind of just reaffirmed to me that, yeah, Ausar has a real legit chance to be the starting wing for the Detroit Pistons. And before I put out the first lineup that I think that the most likely one I think the Pistons would start if they did go with Ausar in the starting lineup, I just want to say this. Another main reason why Ausar should start immediately, I don't think I said this exact point 2 weeks ago when we had the episode why Ausar Thompson should start. And that's a mess up on my end because this probably should be one of the main points. I kind of hinted towards it, but I didn't really emphasize it enough. If Ausar Thompson's not in the starting lineup, the Pistons don't have a primary wing defender. You're not putting Jaden Ivey on one of the team's best players. You're not putting Bojan on one of the team's best players. I know everyone loves Stu, but I like Stu as a 5 that switches out on guards, not a guy you just have surrounding the perimeter on defense. I don't know how good he actually is at being a primary perimeter defender. I actually don't know how good he's going to be at that. I don't think we saw great things from him on the perimeter last year. I think his best skill set is the fact he's a big guy that can be in a switching defense as a 5 and switch out on guards when he has to, not someone you want on the perimeter all times. But anyways, my point is, if Ausar does not start, they don't have a guy you put on the other team's best wing and just have them, you feel confident with them guarding. Now, they may lose the matchup, but you feel confident with them guarding. You don't want Cade being that guy because Cade's going to have a lot on his plate offensively, and you're going to ask him to do too much. So if Ausar is not in that starting lineup, you're not going to have a primary wing defender guy. And as you saw all last season, the Pistons got absolutely torched by offensively gifted wings. So I think that really, you need that desperately. I know that people care about spacing. Heck, you guys have heard how much I care about spacing. But I do believe it starts on defense a lot. And the Pistons just don't have a guy that you can put on a wing and just have him be that primary defender in their starting lineup. I know I'm probably going to get a few Stu fans, a few Stu stands, I should say, that believe you can just put Stu on a wing, a 3, and have him guard the whole time and think he can get away with that. I'm telling you he can't. That's not his strength there. So I think that's the biggest reason why Asar should be in the starting lineup. The Pistons got killed by wings last season. If they start with Bojan and Stu, I think they're probably going to get destroyed by gifted wings again on the offensive end. So that's my biggest reason. There was a bunch of reasons I laid out 2 weeks ago in the episode, but that probably should have been the main reason, the main thing emphasized is the fact that without Asar in the starting lineup, they don't got no one else. But okay, the first lineup that I think that the Pistons, if they were to decide, if Ausar Thompson actually does start, I think this is probably the most likely lineup that they run, and it's Cade, Ivy, Asar, Bojan, and Duren. And the reason why I think this is the most likely lineup is, and I don't want to spoil what the second lineup is, but I'm sure you guys can guess, seeing that this is the first one. With this one, you are obviously sacrificing some defense because you're having Bojan on at the 4 position. But this is why I think this is the best lineup. You're keeping spacing on the floor. If you insert Asar into the starting lineup, you are sacrificing some spacing simply having him in the starting lineup because I don't think anyone really projects him to be a good shooter out the gate. I think he could eventually get to being an average shooter, a decent shooter from beyond the arc, somewhere around 35%. I think he could get there. I don't think that's going to be immediate for him. So you are sacrificing some spacing if you start him. If you keep Bojan in the starting lineup, though, who was one of the best shooters in the entire NBA this past season, you're kind of trying to make up for it. So, yes, are you losing some spacing figuratively by moving Stu out of the starting lineup for Asar? Figuratively, I guess. Even though Stu shot 32% this past season, I don't know if there's any guarantees that Stu is a great shooter either. But Stu has shown, at least in the NBA for a limited sample, that he was a fine shooter for that 25-game stretch. So you're losing a little bit of spacing for Stu. That's what you're doing. But you're gaining a lot more defensively because of the wing position. Asar can guard the other team's best wing. And I think this part right here is what makes this lineup work. It's what really makes this lineup function. Because the main concern you probably have with Bojan as the 4 are 2 things. One, Bojan guarding the 4, and my response would be you're going to have a concern about Bojan guarding the 4 or the 3. I'm at a point where I think that using Bojan at the 4 and having him guard against bigger guys and trying to use his strength and length is probably better suited for him than having him guard a 3 that's going to be faster, quicker, and he's going to be running around a little bit more. That's what my assumption is. I think he probably is better defensively at the 4, even though he's not good defensively either way. That would be my response to that. And then secondly, would be rebounding. If you have Bojan at the 4, he's not a good rebounder. You're going to be sacrificing stuff on the glass. However, starting Asar at the 3, if he translates what we saw in Summer League, where he was a tremendous rebounder for a wing, I think he had 2 double-doubles. One game where he had 10-plus rebounds. I believe it was around, I can't remember. I don't want to say an off number. I believe he had 2 games where he had 10-plus rebounds, though. But he was a really good rebounder in the Summer League. Now, it was Summer League. You have to see if that translates. But in training camp, if he's a really good rebounder, in preseason, if we see him being a really good active rebounder, Asar makes up for that. Asar will make up for the fact that Bojan's not a good rebounder. And then you can switch up defensive matchups. If you want Asar more around the rim, if you want him providing weak side rim protection to where he can really help with on the glass as well. And also, he'll probably just be crashing the glass from the perimeter anyways. If he's that big of an active defender, or not just a defender, I meant a rebounder for the Pistons, I feel like Asar kind of perfectly covers up what this lineup would lack. If I didn't tell you Asar was the guy you were trying to start, and I just told you you're starting Bojan at the 4, you would respond to me and say, okay, well, then your weakness is going to be defense and rebounding. And those are the 2 things Asar should immediately come in and kind of shore up in the starting lineup. He has other things he has to work on, obviously. He's raw. But those are 2 things that he should come in and immediately help out the gate. So with that thinking, I think that's why this lineup, for me, complements each other perfectly. If they do decide they want to start Asar, I think this makes the most sense. and they kind of complement each other, Bojan and Asar, in ways that I don't think any other lineup will be able to. So that's why I have this lineup as the first lineup I believe the Pistons would go with if they decided to start Ausar Thompson. So let me know what you guys think about that, what I said. Do you guys agree, disagree with me? What are your 3 lineups that you guys would, if you had to pick 3 lineups to craft, what are those lineups that you would if it had to have Ausar Thompson in the starting lineup? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, we'll talk about the second starting lineup, which I'm sure you guys can guess what it's going to be. And we'll talk about the negatives and the positives of that lineup when we come back. But first, I've got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, Ibotta. Picking up burgers and hot dogs for a summer barbecue? You know you're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? Finally taking that summer vacation that you've been planning for but dreading buying all of the necessities before you take off? It's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's just that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you could use your cash back to buy that flight that you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to too much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED to get $5 just for trying Ibotta. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Before I get into the second lineup that I have here, I think one of the more interesting things that would also come with starting Ausar Thompson would be, okay, what's the rotation look like then behind the starting lineup now? Because if you bench Bojan, who's not? Is he playing the 4? Is he playing the backup 4? Is he playing the backup 3? Then who's the 4? You got Livers there. If you bench Stu, are you playing Stu and Wiseman together off the bench? Is that something we really want to see? Like, that could play a big part into what they decide to do. Do we really want to see Stu with Wiseman? Do we want to see Stu with Bagley? My answer would be no. If they were to bench Stu and not start him and start Ausar and Bojan, I think the best lineup probably would be just Stu at the 5 next to Livers and who would get to the third spot? Then you could really go with Livers. Did I say Livers? Yeah, Livers at the 4. Maybe Harris at the 3. Then Burks and Monty. But yeah, I don't know if they would want to put 2 bigs on the bench next to each other. So that's something interesting to keep in mind. But the second lineup I have here is, I think you guys already know, Cade, Ivy, Asar, Stu, and Duren. Now, with this one, this is why I have it as my second lineup, and I tweeted this out earlier. Follow me at Kuka Hill if you haven't already. But I tweeted this out earlier. The first lineup I like more because, yes, you are figuratively sacrificing spacing, but the amount that you're sacrificing spacing, I don't believe that you're sacrificing with this lineup. This or defense, I guess. I said that backwards. The first lineup, you're sacrificing defense a little bit by putting Bojan at the 4. But I don't believe that you're sacrificing as much defense as you are spacing with this lineup. I'm sorry, I said that completely backwards the first time. I hope you guys get what I'm saying. So basically what I'm saying here is, with Ausar and Bojan, yeah, you're sacrificing a little spacing, but by starting Stu and Ausar, you're sacrificing way more spacing with that lineup than you are defense with Ausar and Bojan, in my opinion. So that's why I don't have this lineup number 1. But if you were to go with Cade, Ivy, Asar, Stu, and Duren, basically what you're doing and saying is we believe that Stu is going to be a really good defender at the 4. And I don't think we've seen that yet, by the way. I think he still has to show that. I think he showed potential as a switching 5 his rookie season and second season in the NBA. We didn't see as much of it this past year. So we still have to see how good of a defender he is at the 4 on the perimeter exclusively. But basically you're saying we believe that he is going to be a good defender. We believe Duren's going to get better as a defender. Cade is already an okay defender. He's a neutral defender. And adding Asar in there, who we believe is going to be a good defender, we're just going to buy in defensively. We're going to lock teams down. We're going to cause turnovers. We're going to get active in the passing lanes. We're going to play aggressive defensively. And we're going to run in transition. We're going to run in transition. We're going to get easy, fast break points. Asar, Ivy, Cade, and Duren should all feast in transition. And that's basically what you're buying into being your team's philosophy. Your defense is going to feed into your offense. That's how you're going to get going. Now, could the half-court sets be a little clunky? Possibly. Your half-court offense may not be too great unless Stu proves to be this elite shooter, unless Asar really takes this step forward as a shooter that you kind of saw him starting to take a little bit of a step in improvements at the end of the OTE season this past year. But unless you see that, you're basically saying, look, we know our half-court offense isn't going to be great, but our defense is going to be good. We're going to create a lot of turnovers, and we're going to get out in the break. We're going to get easy baskets that way, and we're going to keep up offensively by doing that, which I don't think was or would be the worst idea. I don't think that's terrible. I just don't think – I think what you're doing with this lineup, you're making a lot of assumptions, I feel like. You're making the assumption that Duren at 19 years old is going to be a good defensive big man, which you don't see very many good defensive teenagers, especially bigs, because they're the backline of the defense. They're the backbone. They have to talk. They have to know a lot of different coverages. They have to react to a lot more. They get put in pick and rolls. You don't see very many good young defensive big men. They usually have to grow into it. Now, I believe in Duren being a great defensive big man eventually. Yes, I think he's going to be a great defensive big man. But expecting him to be that at 19, that's a big assumption. You're also making an assumption that Stu's going to be a great defender at the 4, which is something I don't know if it's going to be, which is going to be true. You're also making the assumption that Cade, coming off the injury, now this one is not as big of an assumption. I don't think Cade's ever going to be a negative defensively, but it is a little bit of just assuming that coming off the injury, Cade's going to be back to where he was his rookie year defensively, where it was like, yeah, he's cool, he's fine defensively. He's not anything crazy, but he's not a liability. I don't think that's too crazy to assume. I think that's probably going to happen, but it is a little bit of an assumption. And then also you're assuming, which I'm assuming this, even having this episode, talking about Asar being the starting lineup, but you are also assuming that Asar is going to be a good defender out the gate as a rookie. Now, we've said this many times on the podcast. I'm going to keep saying it. You don't see rookies a lot of the time be really good defenders. You don't see it very often. But I am making the assumption that Asar will be a pretty good defender his rookie year, which is why I put him in the starting lineup. However, I think that the rest of the lineup, you're then making a lot of assumptions everywhere else as well. Whereas with the first lineup, you're kind of accepting, look, I don't think you're really assuming anything with the starting lineup outside of Asar is going to be a good defensive rookie. Like, you're basically accepting faults and accepting what you got to do. Hey, we're going to have spacing with Bojan. He's not going to be a great defender. Asar's going to make up for that on the other end. He's going to make up for that on the boards. On offense, Bojan's going to keep our spacing. Asar's going to add a little bit of ball handling. We might lose a little bit with spacing because Asar isn't a great shooter, but it is what it is. We think Bojan will make up for it, and Asar will make up for him defensively. In this one, you have to assume that Stu takes another jump as a shooter, that he's going to be a good shooter. Because if he's not a good shooter, now you have 3 guys on the floor in Duren, in Asar, in Stu, who are not good shooters, and now it's just cramped for everybody else. Now you're going way overboard with hey, we're going to buy in on defense. We can sacrifice a little spacing. No, that would be unplayable. So you have to hope that Stu makes the jump as a shooter. You have to make the defensive assumption. So that's just why I don't think this lineup, if they do start Asar, I have this as the second lineup because I think that's what they would do. I do think this would be either first or second in the Pistons' mind. But honestly, for me, this would probably be last. Like I would not do this starting lineup until like midway through the year, and Stu's shown me that he can be a good shooter, that he is a good shooter so far to that point, that Asar has shown me that maybe he's a more willing shooter that we saw of him in Summer League, and that he is that good defensive rookie. Like, this one would be one I'd have to wait and see on. Like, maybe I could see this happening in February and moving on, but this is not one that I would risk putting out on the floor to start the season. That's just me. I wouldn't do that. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys disagree, agree? Would you guys be okay with this being the lineup they start right out the gate? Or would you want to wait and see before you put this starting lineup out there? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Cougar Hill. When we come back, we'll discuss the final lineup, and this is going to be a little bit of a hot take, but I actually think this would be my second lineup. I don't think the Pistons would do it, but I think this would be my second lineup if they really want to start Ausar Thompson. Well, I'll tell you guys what that one is when we come back. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So this third lineup right here, I think is a little bit of a hot take. I think you guys probably know where I'm going with this. But I think this is a hot take. I would start outside of the first lineup. This one would be second for me. I think it's last for the Pistons organization. I don't think they would have the gall, or I don't think they actually would consider benching both Bojan and Stu. I can't see that happening. So I don't think this lineup's realistic. But I've said in previous podcasts that this upcoming lineup that I'm about to say, I think it could end up being, when we look at the end of the season, we look back at lineups, I think this could probably end up being their best lineup when you look at the net rating on-off. It's Cade, Ivy, Asar, Isaiah Livers, and Duren. This lineup, I truly believe this lineup just makes the most sense. Like, I think it gives you the most balance on both ends of the floor. Like, if Isaiah Livers, who, by the way, has been working incredibly hard. I saw he just had an interview with his trainer, Micah Lancaster, who we had on the podcast last summer, which we might have him back on before training camp starts. Stay tuned for that. But listen to how he talks about his offseason training, seeing some of the videos from Micah on some of Isaiah Livers' offseason training. If he can just stay healthy, I think he's going to have a big year. But if Livers can get to where he was his rookie year and be like a 40% three-point shooter, now he's a good shooter already, but if he can get to 40%, and be that like elite type of shooter on good volume, I truly believe this would just be the best lineup the Pistons could put out there if they were really trying to win. I mean that for real. With Cade, you have your lead ball handler, your playmaker on the floor. You have some playmaking to help him out, take some of the burden off in Ivy and Asar. Livers provides the spacing. He also is a very good team defender, and he's active on the glass. Now, I don't think he's a great rebounder. I think sometimes his size can limit him. But he's always on the glass. He's trying to box out. He's always attempting to be on the glass. You don't have to worry about him not rotating defensively, not being in position for rebounds. If he doesn't get a rebound, it's usually because he's just smaller than the other person, or the guy's just stronger. Like that'd be the issues that he runs into. But he's active on the glass and an active defender. Also, probably the Pistons' best team defender this past season, and could probably be their best team defender this season too. So you get that with Livers. Offensively, I just think you're basically, offensively, you're getting the spacing that you want with Livers that you would get with Bojan. Not at the same level, but you're getting the spacing. You're not getting the level of Bojan, who, again, was one of the best shooters in the NBA this past year. But you are getting spacing still with Livers, who is a really good shooter, and I hope and I believe he could get to becoming an excellent shooter. You're keeping some playmaking on the floor. And then defensively, you have good defenders. You have Cade, you have Asar, and you have Livers. Like, that would be the idea there. You don't have the only guy on that floor that is just being attacked figuratively is Jane Ivey. Now, Duren is probably not going to be that good of a defender at 19, But, like, you just have to live with that. Like, that's something you just have to live with as a young big man. So the only guy on the floor that would be getting attacked is Ivy. You don't have to worry about the problem with starting Bojan at the 4. Like, oh, God, now you got Bojan guarding 4s. Can he do that? I don't think he'll be able to handle it. He's not going to be active defensively. They're going to attack him defensively. You don't have to worry about with starting Stu. Can Stu be a good enough shooter? Is he going to get enough shots up at a high enough clip to where defenses start to respect him, that he has any kind of gravity? And if he doesn't have enough gravity, is he hitting him at a high enough percentage where it's worth it for the Pistons? Like, with Bojan and Stu, you're having like some concerns with whether it's defense or it's offense. With this lineup, I don't really think you're having that many questions on either end. Like, I think that's the best balance you can get from the 3 and 4 spot, because Livers can play defense and he can shoot. He's not going to try to do things he can't do. He's not going to attempt shots that he shouldn't be taking. He's going to play the right way. He's going to make the extra pass. He's going to play the right way. He's going to make the extra cut, or the cut to the basket when it's open. Like, he's just a smart player, and he's their best team defender. So you're getting both offense and defense with Isaiah Livers. And then Asar, he's helping you defensively, and you're keeping the playmaking on the floor with Asar, and you kind of buffer that department with him, Cade, and Ivy. So I think that's like the most balanced lineup. Do I think the Pistons are going to run this lineup as their starting lineup? No, I don't think it's even like I don't think they have any interest in doing it. I don't think it has any chance of being their starting lineup. Do I think at the end of the season that we'll look back and look at the minutes that this lineup does share together throughout the games? I do believe we'll see it at some point throughout games. Honestly, I think it probably could be their closing lineup at times. But do I think we'll look at the end of the season, look back, look at the net ratings of these lineups and be like, oh, Cade, Ivy, Asar, Livers, Duren, that was the best lineup the Pistons had? Yeah, I think that could possibly be the case. And maybe the Pistons are just a year late, or they're just slow in making that decision. And also, like we mentioned in it was either the last episode or 2 episodes ago, you do have to manage personalities too. Like, you can't upset. You don't really want to upset your veterans. So if like moving Bojan to the bench would really upset him and kind of, bring some stuff to the locker room that has been outside of that has been like a great locker room. They haven't had any issues. Like, yeah, then that probably impacts the decision too. And we don't know that stuff outside the locker room. But just from a basketball perspective, yeah, I think that probably, like, at the end of the season, this could end up being their best lineup. But can't see the Pistons actually considering benching both Stu and Bojan. Let me know in the comment section down below, though. Do you guys agree with me that this could actually end up being their best lineup by the end of this season? Do you guys think I'm crazy? Let me know all that. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. I want to thank you guys, though, for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe. Until next time, peace out.